Now we're going to talk about finding the percentage, rate, and base. So here are some common problems that can be encountered in business. You might be asked, what is 2% of a $1,000 invoice? Like you might be calculating a discount. What is 12 1/8% of $1,232.88? What percent of 8 is 12? That one's a little trickier. And 248 is 5% of what number? So to solve these problems, we need to be able to find three things: percentage, rate, and base. And we'll define these terms on the next slide. Okay, before we start using the formula, percentage equals rate times base, we first need to be able to identify each variable. Now this document that we're looking at is an Excel spreadsheet that I have put on Canvas for you, and it's called Summary of Calculating Percentage, Rate, and Base. And we have down in gray, we have three different examples of solving for all three variables. But before we can do that, we need to be able to determine which variable is which. The easiest one to identify is the base, because the base always follows the word of. For example, in this statement, 500 is 50% of 1,000. We know that 1,000 is the base because it follows the word of. So once we have determined which one is the base, we then go and figure out which one is the rate. So the rate has a percentage sign or the word percent. So in the statement, 500 is 50% of 1,000, we know the 50% is the rate because it has the percentage sign or the word percent. And because we've identified the rate and the base, the third number, which in this example is 500, must be the percentage. So let's talk a little bit more about the rate. Notice the keys for finding the rate is it has the percentage sign or the word percent. So I'm going to scroll down to an example where it has the word percent. So notice this question is 500 is what percent of 1,000? Well, let's identify all three variables. We always start with base because it's the easiest one to determine. And remember, the base follows the word of. So in the question, 500 is what percent of 1,000? We know 1,000 is the base. So then we move on to the rate because it's the next easiest one to determine. Notice it says the rate has a percentage sign or the word percent. So let's look at the question at the top. 500 is what percent of 1,000? So because it says is what percent and there's no number, then we know that is the number we are trying to find. And then 500 must be the percentage because it's the only one that we have not identified. So in the next few slides, we'll get some practice in doing these actual problems, and we'll start off by calculating percentage. So we will need to know this formula: percentage equals rate times base. The best way to explain this is with an example. So is this true? 500 is 50% of 1,000? I think we can pretty easily say that that is true. So we have to determine which of these numbers is the percentage, which is the rate, and which is the base. The reason we're doing it is because if we're giving two of the three terms, we can use simple algebra to calculate the missing term. So the number following the word of is the base. So notice the statement is 500 is 50% of 1,000. Therefore, 1,000 is the base. The number with a percentage sign is the rate. So 50% would be the rate. And the remaining number, 500, is called the percentage. So we know that in the term, or in this statement, 500 is 50% of 1,000. We know 500 is a percentage, 50% is the rate, and 1,000 is the base. So as I mentioned, the reason we're doing this is because if we know two of the three numbers, we can use simple algebra to find the missing variable. For example, the question could be, what is 2% of 1,000? So we're going to start off really easy. So don't forget, the formula is percentage equals rate times base. So for example, we could be asked, what is 50% of 1,000? Now this one is really easy. We just said what the answer was on the previous slide. But let's see if we can work through this step by step so we can do the harder questions. We know 50% is the rate because it's the number with a percentage sign. And we know 1,000 is the base because it's the number that follows the word of. So we're going to plug those two numbers into the formula. So remember, the formula is percentage equals rate times base. So I'm going to plug 50% in for the rate, 1,000 in for the base. So now the formula is percentage equals 50% of 1,000. Then we can use our calculator to calculate that. The percentage must be 500. How did I calculate that? 1,000 times 50%. So the answer to this question would be 500 is 50% of 1,000. So we're going to do a lot of these examples here. And they graduate from really easy, you can do them in your head, to more difficult. So this one's easy too. What is 25% of 1,000? Now remember, the word of, the number that follows the word of is the base. So 1,000 is the base. And because 25% has the percentage sign, it's the rate. So we're going to plug the numbers into the formula, and the formula is percentage equals rate times base. So the percentage equals 25% of 1,000, and on our calculator, that's 1,000 times 25. Hit the percent key, and you get 250 is the answer. Let's do another one. You can probably do this one in your head too. What is 10% of 83? Well, I always try to find the base first because it's the word, or excuse me, it's the number that follows the word of. So 83 is the base because it follows the word of. 10% is the rate because it's the number with a percent sign or the word percent. So we're going to plug those into the formula. So the formula becomes percentage equals 10% times 83. So on your calculators, you can calculate that as 83 times 10 and then hit the percent key, and you should get 8.3. Now you could enter the numbers the other way too. You could enter them as 10 times 83 and then hit the percent key, and you will still get 8.3. All right, so those were all really easy. You could probably do them in your head. Let's try something a little more difficult. What is 77% of $980? Well, let's do this step by step. Remember, the base follows the word of. Therefore, 980, since it follows the word of, is the base. 77% is a rate because rate is the number with a percent sign or the word percent. So we're going to plug those into the formula. So we get percentage equals 77% times 980. On your calculator, you can enter that as 980 times 77 and then hit the percent sign, and you should get $754.60. Let's try another one. What is 125% of 200? So again, I always like to find the base first because it's the easiest one to find. It's the number that follows the word of. So 200 must be the base. 125% is the rate because it's the number with a percent sign or the word percent. So we're going to plug those into this formula. The formula is percentage equals rate times base. So the formula, once we plug in the numbers, is percentage equals 125% times 200. And on our calculator, enter that as 200 times 125, and then hit the percent key, and you should get 250. So that's how you find percentage. In the next video, we'll figure out how to find rate.